Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mel.
All right, this is a Streets and Roads Committee meeting, September 3rd. Kane, Ryland, Joe, Jason, and hopefully Daniel will join us. So there's a couple items on our agenda. One is reviewing the requirements for a consideration for reducing the residential streets from 30 to 25 miles per hour. And Joe had sent us his email earlier, a little bit ago. Joe, if you wanna.
Said that out loud.
Yeah, I requested to share my screen.
Got it.
So are you seeing my screen? It doesn't look like it yet.
Right now we see a blank Joe Palin screen.
Oh, well, the reason you're not seeing me, I guess, is my computer is shut. I can fix that.
There we go.
We got your chin. Oh, there you go. That's Jason's screen, okay. Okay, Joe, if you want to share your desktop, there you go. Can we see it, Joe, your email?
You do see it.
Yes. Just popped up. It's your email. Well, no,
Yeah. Anyway, this is the information that Jason sent, and he kind of goes through and presents the research that he'd come up with, and it is thorough and fairly straightforward. I'm wondering if it's maybe even simpler than that. I also sent an email from Mike Flaherty back in 2021. We had talked about this issue back then, and Mike provided some correspondence in terms of his perspective on how this or what is required. And it's very similar to what Jason had, with maybe a little bit more information. I also found, oops, that's the wrong one. Some information that MnDOT put out. They put together a study in 2023, kind of looking back since 2019, the cities that have implemented these types of changes and what modifications or what impact those changes on the speed limit had. And so I thought that was interesting, so I provided that to the group. And you'll also,
excuse me, Joe, could you make your screen a little larger? Display. One more click. There you go.
yeah.
Thank you.
And so you'll see that, Rochester is on the list. They completed theirs in December 2020, but there's also quite a few other cities that have went through that process. I noticed that Stewartfield was on the list. And then I've got some colleagues that represent some of these cities. And I know for a fact, I just talked to the gentleman that is a city engineer in Oak Park Heights. They did it. And when I talked to the Oak Park Heights engineer, he had a little bit different take on the process. And he pointed me to the statute, this 169.14, and he kind of looked at subdivision 2, and he said, well, in Oak Park Heights, they didn't do a traffic or engineering study on their streets because they only look to reduce speed limits on residential streets, and the And I think that's what you're doing if I'm understanding you correctly. And so he pointed to this subdivision 2, item 7, you can reduce speed limits to 25 miles an hour in residential areas if adopted by the road authority having jurisdiction over the residential area, and you erect signs at the beginning and end. And it kind of states that the speed limit isn't in effect until the signs have been erected. And he said it's, from their perspective, that easy because the statute does allow you to reduce from 30 to 25 in residential areas. Now, if you're going to look at other areas, for example, any collector streets or commercial areas or other areas of town, and look to change the speed limit, then you might have to go through a more robust process. And so, based on the Oak Park Heights city engineers' evaluation and what they did, they pointed to this requirement in this subdivision and this item 7 and the caveats to that, and they did it. And so I don't know, obviously we can help with traffic studies and do that type of evaluation, but it appears at least some cities are taking a much simpler approach.
We are not looking at, Minnesota Avenue, north and south, Fifth Street, northwest, northeast, and Lake Shady Avenue, north and south.
Third Avenue. We leave that 30
Third Avenue.
by C.H. Robinson.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that residential.
I'm sorry, Third Avenue Southeast?
Southwest by C.H. Robinson, Sunnyview Lane.
Okay, yeah.
We'd leave that at 30, Joe.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, this is from the pavement management plan. I'm just, as a visual aid, I would think that, just like you said, Minnesota Avenue, Fifth Street Northwest, Lake Shady Avenue, 3rd Street Southwest, maybe East Center Street, depending on how you look at that. Maybe this street in through this commercial area. Possibly this section through here. Maybe you do this loop at least and leave that at 30, but everything else is 20, 25. Yeah. But again, there's, we can do whatever you guys want to do. But I guess the, first point is that really what we're interested in doing, is dropping to just from 20 or 30 to 25 within only the residential areas. And if that is the case, it might warrant asking Jason and Mike to look at that statute one more time and see if that is indeed all we're doing. Maybe this is a little bit simpler. I'm happy to do a study for you, but just from my perspective, that study is going to be, we're looking at, it talks about looking at crash data and design criteria. You could spend a decent amount of money on that for.
So what was that statute? 69.14?
Yeah, it's this one. One sixty. Can you see it, Jason?
Yeah, I'm looking it on my computer.
Yeah, 169.14. Speed limits, zones, and radar.
That was our original intent, is just keeping the residential, the only, this, West Center Street. Um, I know it comes in from the township, which is similar to Minnesota Avenue and
Right. So it seems to me that, we would want to, if indeed we were going to do that, we'd want to go and produce some sort of, color-coded map that indicates all streets that are proposed to be 25 miles an hour, and that would be most of them.
Mhm.
And kind of go from there. This section of 12th Street Southwest would be in question too, because it's partially in the, it's half in the township. So I'm not sure you have jurisdiction fully on that.
Yeah. Oh, to change it?
Contains that road.
Yeah. So maybe just throwing out ideas, maybe, this section of 12th Street and this up to 3rd Avenue and then 3rd Avenue down to 100th Street would remain 30 miles an hour. Arguably that would maybe make sense.
Do we have any speed limit signs in that area?
Probably not.
No,
I don't know. Kane, do you know?
no, there's no speed limits off on 12th. Speed limit signs start on Zumbro Hills Drive. Coming
Oh.
from Lake Shady.
Yeah, and then the other piece is to identify where new signage would need to be. So, you'd have signage here and here and here and here and here and here and, on the other side over here too. And, where that starts, I guess, is debatable.
Are
We'd
you
have to,
are you thinking about putting up just signs that say, like the ones that talk about speed limit signs 20 or speed limit 25 miles an hour in city unless otherwise noted type thing?
I would think so, yeah. But again, it's not exactly my expertise. But that would make sense to me. I don't know if you've contemplated that, Kane, or anyone else.
Well, I think that it'd be a good idea to have those, but I think there's certain areas where we need to make sure we're actually posting speed limit signs to help reinforce
Right.
the slower speeds where we're having, I think, quote unquote, the most problems, if you will.
Yeah.
And that might be something that this group can look at and go, okay, well, we think that, this neighborhood over here on the east side really needs it, or this one over here on the west side, we really need to make sure we're posting some things. But, it doesn't do any good to post one on a dead end cul-de-sac road that's got 5 houses. That's
Right.
does no good. But if we've got a long stretch of road, kind of, there's a lot of winding neighborhoods through here that is just one continuous road, it might be good to put in a couple speed limit signs there.
I would agree. And if you want, if there's clear direction, I mean, I could put together that kind of map, highlight the streets that, at least in my opinion or our opinion, would make sense to go to 25 miles an hour, and then also where new signage should be erected to indicate that speed limit change. And um, that could be a talking point for the council.
So that would probably have to come to council to get approval for you to do that study.
Well, I don't know how much of a study it is. It's basically
Or
a figure
plan,
with,
whatever you want to.
yeah. I mean, and if you want me to make it into more of a little memo form, I can add a little bit of
Yeah.
language. I from my perspective, it's kind of even if we do feel like there's some sort of study involved, I mean, I'm not sure how crash data is really going to be impactful, although we could look at it. But you're lowering the speed limit from 30 to 25 in a residential setting. I'm not sure how that could adversely impact the health, safety, and well-being of the traveling public.
Well, it's just, you know, my perspective of reducing the 25-mile-an-hour speed is just due to the lack of sidewalks and people use the streets for walking.
Yeah.
And that's the main purpose of, safety
Well,
for people walking and
right. And
pedestrians.
you're absolutely right. We can, and I could touch on that in, the memo too, that, the majority of these streets are 22 to 24 feet wide, and they don't have shoulders, and they don't contain bike or pedestrian facilities, and makes sense to reduce the speed to encourage, public safety. And
That's, at least that's where I'm coming from. My main emphasis, and, just talking about the streets, we have East Center Street that comes down off the hill from the township. That could be 30 down to the bottom or something like that. And also
right.
First Street First Street Northeast past Garden Park. That's another place for 30 and less posted 25 through that area. So,
Oh yeah, going out to the township there.
yeah. So that's two more areas that we would have to see how far we want to have 30 start from the beginning of the city limits, or like on the East Center
Yeah.
Street down at the bottom of the hill where Dean Radke is at, and
Like right
anything that's
here.
coming in
Yeah.
from the township.
Or here. Yeah, I think, just putting stuff on a map and indicating where those signs kind of and the speed limits start and stop, would give people at least something to contemplate.
I know people on West Center Street, because a lot of them do walk on West Center Street. We've always heard a comment about walking there, even though it's coming in from the township, but I still think it's warranted 25 all the way in,
Right.
but
Well, and whether that happens here or here, I guess, is debatable, right?
yes.
But it should happen at some point when the density increases. You've got, and that, again, here, it does change though.
If we put it not at the city limits, but further into where the residential starts, and those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 properties would say, why didn't you start earlier? Because we still walk. So
Well, they might, and you can always move, well, we could always move the signs, or we could propose them at city limits too, I guess.
I
That's
think they're customarily done at city limits. And then if there's a different speed limit zone, there's usually a speed limit sign posted right behind that sign. It looks goofy, but that's the way that they're done. So you'd come in and you'd see the sign that says
Yeah.
25 unless otherwise posted. And then another like 20 yards down the road is like a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit sign.
And I don't know if they exist there at 30 miles an hour now. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But you're right. I think that's how they should be done.
Yeah.
And, if you were going to go from 30 to 20 or mess with, 40 mile an hour road to 30, that I think is different and requires more analysis and study. But again, maybe this is something that you just might want to kind of run by Mike too. Because his conclusion, it looked like it was a little bit different or more complicated, but depending on the wishes of the city, I can put together a one-page memo with a map, kind of making a justification for it. And talking about the fact that, you've got 24-foot, again, rural section roads with no curb and gutter, no shoulders, no pedestrian facilities, no nothing. And it makes some sense to
that would be a
do
good
that.
way to get the topic in the council to see it. And we also may want to consider removing the 20-mile-an-hour signs on Second Avenue and also in West Center Street.
Those would go to 25.
Yeah,
Oh, the stuff that we just put in.
yes.
Yeah, West Center, First and Second Avenue. Yep, those are all 20 right now, but I would suggest we change those to 25s.
Make it uniform.
Yep.
If you read there's a lot of things to read about this topic, and I'm not so sure that it makes a huge difference when you decrease the speed limit as to how fast people really drive unless there's, significant enforcement. But at least you're making an effort, and hopefully some people do adhere to that, and
Yeah.
it
Well, it was
can't hurt from what I can see.
not for lack of effort, that's for sure.
No.
Well, I would, need a motion or not, but I would recommend Joe put together a memo and just take this map or whatever map you have and just highlight where the 30 and the 25-mile-an-hour streets would be. And I don't know if you want to go into the detail of where the signs should be right now, but I think you could definitely get a general flavor with your memo about our discussion here, shared with you where we'd like to see the reduction. There's a consensus with the street committee, I guess that's what I'd like to propose.
I think that that's gonna be a requirement, is to get something on paper that we can look at that'll highlight the differences.
Okay?
Seems
that a
to make
time-
some sense. And then we can, do a sign count and calculate a cost.
I can help out with that, Joe, and the map of where we can put certain signs, and I can help with that too.
Well, maybe I can get you a draft and you can look at it
Sure.
and then add some signs in. And I'm assuming that you might be able to, I know you can, but hopefully you may be able to find the time to do that and not have a contractor come in to do that and help the city budget a little bit too.
Yeah, we would install the signs in-house.
Okay.
Time
Do we
frame.
want to review that map before council?
It'd be good, and I think the streets committee should, to make a firm recommendation, I guess that would be good, Joe, if you could send it to the four of us, five of us, four of us.
Yeah.
We can have a quick discussion, or if you're able to make it, memos that we can post onto the map on like the edge. I don't know if that's something that you're able to do. Just a live document that we can chat in.
We could do something like that.
Whatever's easiest for you, honestly, because I think it's a small group. We can
Right.
Do emails as well.
Right.
So Joe, the packet deadline is September 10th at noon. Does that fit in your schedule, or we push it out to October?
I don't know that this is a huge lift.
You need the time, I have no problem. Past October, then not that the ground's frozen, but it'd be nice to have it in place.
Yeah. And it's gonna take some time to get the signage and whatnot too. And
Yeah,
I'll shoot to have it here, have it to you within the next week. Maybe within the next few days if I can.
Yeah. we could have it by Monday morning or Monday sometime. That would give us time to look at it Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, I should be able to do that.
Plan on that, okay.
I don't know how common it is to reach out to the bus barns to see if this is something that would affect them and their schedules with school starting the next, or have started, or it will be starting soon.
Well, there is a, I would encourage you to have some sort of a public engagement.
Hmm.
Um, and some sort of public engagement that
Yeah, I agree.
provides people the opportunity to comment and, informs people that the changes are happening. And so then, if you don't have everybody surprised when the signs go up and,
Yeah, that's,
there's enforcement issues with that and so on and so forth. Having you know, a public
that's an excellent suggestion. We should do
meeting.
that. And, uh, Daniel, you bring up an excellent point about the transportation too. Um,
I think giving them a heads up that we're even discussing it right now can allow them to build in a little bit of extra buffer into their routes. I know it's probably already late for them to do much, but I mean, I think that can matter. I think when they're on such a tight schedule as it is from one stop to the next.
So I agree, maybe we should just continue on the path that Joe, you're proposing for something within a week, but at the same time, I think we should put it on the agenda for the council that we're coming back with a proposal and we'd like approval to set up a public information meeting for the community. And between the September and the October timeframe, October council meeting, so we can have that public information out there, either in person or just publicize it and share comments back or whatever the council would like to see, but and make some final decision at the October council meeting. Jason, does that sound okay to you too?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Well, that's,
The only question I would have is, should we have council's approval of the information that's going to be shared with public information? Or,
oh yeah, I would definitely want it to, I think that you should bring it before the council and make sure there's consensus and then at that meeting say, we should get this out to the public and when does everybody want to do that?
okay, so let's go back about 5, 6 minutes and we'll just go ahead and plan on putting on the council agenda with your map and memo.
Okay.
On the September meeting and get the council's blessing to go forward with the public information or seek other input and make a decision at the October meeting after the public information meeting.
Okay.
Everybody's kind of shaking their heads, so let's go with that.
Yes. Yep, I agree.
And this map similar to what I'm sharing would be okay. In color, I assume you can post the color maps just fine and
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to dictate on there if there's certain zones that are staying like 30 or 35, like do different colors for different speeds.
Yeah, what would be easier, Joe? Would it just be easier to map out the roads that we're proposing to change
that's
and
what I think.
leave the roads that will be staying the same
Right.
unaffected? So
Keep
literally
it
only
simple.
mapping. Yep.
Yep.
It should be one color. If it's not colored, then it's not changing.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'd use yellow for every change 25-mile-an-hour street and everything else would stay uncolored, but labeled,
Yep.
just like they kind of are.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Okay, good. All right, next item, if there's nothing else we want to touch base is,
Sorry, Ryan, only other thing that I think that we could do in the meantime is actually we could reach out to township and say, hey, we're, and maybe this is after our council meeting and say, hey, we are discussing changing these. Can we change the one down by the ball field is that gonna be an issue, or where would you like the signage um, for the upcoming changes for the ones that are coming, in and out of the township? I think it's worth reaching out to them
Sure.
because they might not have an issue at all with us go ahead and change the one in the middle of town here. So
They might have to take an action themselves, and I don't know what the process is for a township, since that's a kind of a tricky question there, isn't it?
it is, but I mean, I think it's worthwhile to say, hey,
Sure.
this is the only street that that it might get a little confusing. We're doing this. We've got 2 months. We can figure it out with them. They're going to meet a couple of times.
Right.
Let's ask them to throw it on their agenda, and um,
Right.
if it's a half-owned road, they might not have to do anything.
Right.
So, just a thought.
I can reach out to Tammy Matsky. She's been very helpful when we changed the speed limits on Minnesota Avenue South.
Mhm.
She was all in favor and very easy to work with. So I can reach out to Tammy and just make her aware of what we're talking about here. And once we have Joe's draft, we can share that with the township as well.
I think that's a great idea.
All right.
The school transportation, the transportation director name is Tammy Quintero. I just Googled transportation director on the website.
That's Pine Island.
At Pine Island, so she has an email address and phone number, so if you want to follow up with her too, Kane?
I sure can.
And then whoever Rochester is, their buses. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
they're both sides, so they'll be just as equally affected.
Okay. I can do that.
Payment management plan.
Yes.
I did send out via email the payment management plan this morning, pretty much hot off the press. It's in draft form, and I thought since we were meeting, it'd be a good opportunity to briefly talk about the payment management plan with the committee and let you guys look at it, think about it, and let me know if you have any questions or comments and when do you want to bring it to council for their review and approval. But obviously it's 11:40, so we don't have a ton of time, but there's a lot of information within this. The most important information is in the appendix, but if it's okay with you guys, I'll just kind of briefly go through the report and hit some of the highlights, and then let you have some time to read it at your leisure. So again, the purpose of the pavement management study is really to develop a process and a schedule for maintaining the city's pavements using the different methods available to us to most effectively and most cost effectively extend the life of the pavements as possible. And so we just provide some information in terms of pavement management rehabilitation options. These in this table are kind of on a square yard basis. But in terms of, looking at the cost, you can see we've got 3 different types of crack fill costs. One is a traditional, the top one is, crack fill, and then a seal coat with that gray trap rock over it. Well, that's $2.70 a square yard. If we move to option 1A, that's where we put the trap rock down and then apply a fog seal over it. That's so the road looks black again, and it controls that aggregate from flying up and moving around on the higher speed roadways, and then of course restriping it. That's at $4 a square yard. We've got 1B, crack fill and fog seal. That's more for pathways, parking lots, things that we don't want the aggregate applied to, but we still want to get some emulsion on to extend the life of the pavement. And then we've got other options, simple pothole filling and patching, We've got a few spots where we're constructing bituminous pathways in lieu of the existing gravel. Then we go to options where we edge mill the existing bituminous and put a new lift of bituminous over the entire roadway. You're looking at $15 a square yard on that. Roadways that are deteriorated beyond mill and overlay, we basically reclaim and repave them. So that's grinding up the surface, mixing in with the underlying aggregate. There you're looking at about $32 a square yard. And then full depth reconstruction with and without curb, you're looking at significant costs on a square yard basis. So you can kind of see the absolute cheapest things to do are crack fill and seal coat. And then as you move beyond that, you start to pay more and more and more for these rehab options. And so looking at the city streets, we did go through a process of looking at them and rating them on a scale of 1 to 10. And this kind of tells you, 10 being, a very good pavement that's essentially brand new, 0 being a gravel pavement. And you can see, how many miles and square yards of pavement and what by percentage that pavement is. You've got a lot of pavements in the 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 range. That's the majority of your pavements, which is great. I don't often see that. You've got one concrete pavement and a little bit of gravel pavement, and you can kind of see that information summarized within that table. And so, this kind of talks about, again, the process of evaluating them streets and what we found and what to do and how to rehab those streets to kind of extend their life to the greatest amount possible. And so this is a little bit more about life cycles. We do like to, or we have proposed some maintenance activities in terms of life cycles, starting with seal coats. We like to seal coat everything every probably 7, 8 years. And that's important because it reduces pavement oxidation, keeps the water out of the pavement, keeps the bituminous pavements flexible, and extends their life at a fairly modest cost in conjunction with crack filling. And then beyond that, again, we go to overlays, and eventually as pavements wear out, you end up reconstructing them, but we want to extend that as far as we can. So we kind of talk about the life cycle costs. This graph is kind of talking about the life cycle costs and the condition and how it degrades and how you can kind of bring that back up and extend that pavement life, allowing it to degrade and then rehab and degrade and then rehab, and ways to extend that pavement life out so that you almost have a perpetual pavement. And that decreases your overall maintenance costs significantly over the lifetime of those pavements. And so that's kind of what we want to do. Talk about the ratings and the rehabilitation methods that kind of correspond with those. 9 to 10, really you typically don't do anything. They're brand new roads, and you're preparing to seal coat in the future. When you get down to 6 to 8, you're probably looking at seal coat, some potholes and crack filling. 5 to 4, you're looking at mill and overlay with the worst pavements needing to be reclaimed and repaved. And then 3 and below, you're really looking at reconstruction. These improvements kind of talk about the different methods of rehabilitation. You can kind of see that in these the text and the photos talking about what those rehab options are. And of course, we want to consider utilities. Orinoco, you have mostly new utilities with the exception of the Phase 1B areas, which don't have any utilities, but are proposed to have sewer and water extended them through in about 2030. And so one of the thoughts that we had is 2030 isn't really that far away. It's 5 years away. Those pavements in areas, the Phase 1B areas, are largely, um, fair to declining. And, you could make the argument as to why continue to do crack fill and maintenance and seal coat maintenance on those pavements to extend their life when they're probably going to get ripped up anyway. So the thought is that maybe in the Phase 1B, we wouldn't be doing anything over the next 5 years. This is a figure illustrating the Phase 1B project areas. And of course, this area is outside the city limits. It's in the township. Kind of continuing through, this is kind of an estimate of the life cycles, assuming that, we go through and do crack fill, seal coat, crack fill, and patching on a continual life cycle, and then at some point mill and overlay, and then go back to crack fill, and ultimately end up reclaiming it. You can extend the pavement lives pretty significantly by following that process, and this kind of marches through those costs, which are significant, but less than the cost to completely reconstruct those roadways. I got 10 minutes left here, so just note, I think this table is interesting. We've talked about the fact that Orinoco has a lot of low density residential areas, and you've got a lot of narrow rural section pavements. And in fact, I did a little bit of comparing by some area cities where I have very reliable information and that are approximately the size of Orinoco. And so if you kind of do some compare and contrast, like Blooming Prairie is almost the same size, you've literally got about twice as much in terms of length of roadways, and maybe a third more in terms of square yards. If you compare the length per capita, it's literally double. The square yards per capita, because Blooming Prairie has a lot of wide streets, it's not quite that, but it's still at least a third more. And so the bottom line is you've got a lot of street area per square yard, and so the cost to maintain those are going to be more significant than other cities face. And we actually see that within the pavement management plan and some of the information that we have projected in terms of maintenance costs moving forward. But I thought this was interesting to compare and contrast them, and that might be helpful to the council and city staff too. Financing for these maintenance projects, most of it comes from general tax levy. If we're doing bigger things like even mill and overlays or reclaim and repave or reconstruct, certainly we would recommend that those costs be partially assessed to the benefiting property owners. And you do have a assessment policy that we have used in the past and would recommend we continue to use. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about street utility fees, but they're currently not allowed by statute. Other cities have started to collect fees for that they use for street maintenance through private utilities like the gas company or the electric company, and they basically put a surcharge on the fees that are being paid through those monthly bills, and that comes back to the city, and they use that in lieu of assessments. So something to kind of consider moving forward in terms of those types of things. So I'll let you look at the conclusions, recommendations. The most important or interesting parts of the report are really the figures in the appendices. And so this figure is just the PACER ratings. It's a color-coded map showing you the conditions of the existing roadways based on the PACER rating system, which is down here in the corner. Again, 10 is new, 1 is gravel, or 0 is gravel, and you can kind of see the condition that the existing roadways are in. And that helps us make decisions on where to spend money and what's in the greatest need, and maybe where not to spend money in terms of pavements that aren't in great condition and aren't improving fast. For example, 3rd Street Southwest, 3rd Avenue Southwest looks like it's a PACER rating of 4. So that's already at a point where it could either be mill or overlaid or reclaimed and repaved. That's one that we might choose to improve at some point in the future and not spend money on seal coat crack fill.
With that's partly in the township, right? That one.
On the west side of it.
I do believe that is the case. Yes. Although you might just be this part here because, well, I guess I don't know. It might be split yet. In terms of improvements moving forward,
Hey, Joe,
yeah,
you take that map, either that one or the one previously, and phase in the phase 1B, or maybe that's what your red lines show there.
that is what the red lines show.
Okay, thank you. All right.
In terms of future reconstructions, that's what the red lines show, at
Right.
least within this area. We're assuming that we're going to try to avoid impacts to the greatest extent on 5th Street Northwest, and on 6th Lane Northeast, because there is a fair amount of room there for utility improvements. But, especially these streets over in this area, and some of these streets have degraded a fair amount. And especially these streets, I'm probably going to target placing the utilities right down the street corridors to reconstruct those in conjunction with the utility improvements, because they're degrading, and by 2030 they're going to have degraded a fair amount more, and I don't really want to, I wouldn't recommend spending money to try to preserve them, knowing that it's likely they're going to get dug up anyway.
Right.
And so what this map is really a color-coded legend or color-coded map illustrating what we propose to do. So for example, the first thing here is in 2026, we've got the green areas being seal-coated and crack filled. So this is basically the River Park area and 5th Street Northeast. Remember that those were our top priorities. The next year we do the yellow areas, Minnesota Avenue, a couple of the downtown streets, and Riverwood Hills. And then the following year would be the pink areas. Those are the streets that were just reconstructed here last year, but by the time we get to 2030, they're at a point where they can start to use some attention again. The problem with these scenarios is, we haven't done a lot in terms of pavement management. We've kind of fallen behind where we'd like to be. And it's difficult to kind of balance. I certainly can't ask the city to spend $500,000 on seal coats next year. I know that. And so I've taken the position where we're going to try to touch all the roads in an 8 to 10 year cycle, with crack fill, seal coat, or a mill and overlay project. And there's a cost of that. And so when we get to the costs, this appendix B is really maintenance and rehab cost estimates. It's just the cost estimates that are used to build the numbers that populate the spreadsheets and appeared in the front. Just transparency is really what it is. And so this figure, or this spreadsheet kind of talks about all the streets in town and, Lake Shady Avenue, start and stop, the feet, lineal feet, the width, the square yards, the pacer rating, you know, when the last improvements were done, recommended improvements to based on the pacer rating, and then kind of summarizing some of these areas and in terms of the rating and what's recommended. Now, I would note that this is solely based on the pacer rating. It doesn't take into account, trying to do rehab improvements on in specific areas or on connecting streets. It's just looking at the rating and what would be required or recommended based on the rating. The next spreadsheet kind of talks this through, and it lays out proposed improvements in 26, 28, 30, 32, and then future concrete pavement rehab. Doesn't put a date on that, but it gives you costs and areas. We've got a few existing gravel streets that probably need to be maintained as gravel streets. This is the future bituminous pathway construction, upgrading the gravel paths in Riverwood Hills. Future construction of phase 1B, if you're interested. There's about $3.2 million of street reconstruction associated with phase 1B. Future reconstruction with curb and gutter. That's really the existing gravel roads. Off West Center Street, that require reconstruction. Trying to think of the gentleman's name there that always complains about a street not being paved.
Jan Thronson, but.
Jan Tronson, that's his street, yep.
Yep.
And then we've also proposed some reclaim and pave, and of course some mill and overlay streets as well. For example, that cul-de-sac in Riverwood Hills, Kane, that's got the settlements that is in pretty good shape, but the settlements are bad, and the only way to rectify it is mill and overlay.
Yeah.
And so as you get to the bottom of the spreadsheets, you see the cost totals. And so you can see that, and I know you can't see, but this first one is 2026. There's a $224,000 project cost to do the rehab that's recommended. And in 28, there's 238,000. And in 30, there's 211,000. And in 32, there's 166,000, which are pretty significant numbers. And I know that might not work within your budget, but I wanted to provide the information to you. And if we've got to revisit this or reshuffle this, we can do that. But at least you have a sense of kind of what we're up against and what needs to be addressed from the standpoint of maintaining and improving some of these roadways. And so I've covered a lot. It's 12 o'clock. I don't mean to go too deep into this, but I just invite you to review this. We can meet again to talk about it. We could submit this to the council for their review and discussion. We can do whatever you guys would like.
Well, I guess it's definitely gonna need some in-depth review by the council. The street committee too, but I think for council for sure, but, yeah, it's, I mean, we knew it was gonna be substantial and but we're talking about years out too, so.
Right. Well, and these are every other year numbers, so you know the budget impact on an annual basis is, you know, half of that, if you will, but that's still a pretty good number.
This is where I think the streets committee should evaluate this more before bringing it to council, because that way you can come to council with something, not just, oh, here's a bunch of information. We don't really have any guiding words for you, if you will. But instead, look at it, review it, and make a plan to present something to council and go, here's all the information, here's kind of what it reads, and this is what we're recommending for council.
Right.
So the council's not gonna have, anything to do to change this. This is the recommendation. This is the guidelines. So I would say that the sooner they get that information, the rest of the council get this information, sooner they can start wrapping their head around dollar amounts. And if we have to change the plan, I think that goes back to streets and roads to take stuff off of the plan if we can't budget for it. That comes back to us to say, okay, well then these are the ones we're recommending. I think we get this in front of council for them to review, because nothing we say is going to change the fact that the roads need to be maintained.
Well, I would add 2 points. This is a subjective document. You know, could you argue that pick a road that this one, that Fifth Street doesn't need to be done in 2026. Yeah, you could. You know, is anybody gonna die because Fifth Street isn't seal coated in 2026? No. Would it be good to get it done because it's probably overdue? Yeah. But if, you know, we all know that you have a budget, we have to work within that budget, and this will help frame and guide budgets and decisions by the council moving forward. And so this is the type of information you need. And now that it's all assembled, can I make modifications to this figure and that spreadsheet pretty quickly? Yeah, I can. Can we modify things based on council input on an annual basis? Yeah, we finally can. It's largely a budgeting and pavement management tool, and hopefully, based on my experience, it will be useful to the council and staff moving forward.
I think this is great, and I think that this is. I hear your point that it's a subjective document, Joe, but the counter argument of that is I can't go out to my street and tell you, hey, this should be done this year or this should be done next year. That's not what I do. I don't. So it is subjective. Like if another Joe Palin came through, would he agree with everything that you put on here? Maybe, maybe not. But like that's not what I do. And that's what nobody on council does. So sure, we can say, well, we don't have the budget to do this, and we, recommend moving this off. And that's a great point to make that we can do a little bit of modifications of these. But I think that for budgeting, we have to be able to see the 223,000, recommended. Can we get it? I don't know, but maybe we get 150 instead of the 40,000 we got last year.
Right.
That's kind of my point, is to get it in front of them to be able to get that shock out of the way for the budget meetings.
Right. And here's some food for thought too. So for example, let's say Minnesota Avenue, we're gonna crack fill, seal coat, and fog seal that and restripe it, and that's $4 a square yard. Well, we can mill and overlay it for 4 times that. Well, is a mill and overlay better than a seal coat? Yeah, you get a brand new surface on it. Is that one of your big high volume roadways? Well, yeah. If you can't afford that in 2026, well, maybe you prefer to mill and overlay that in 2030. That is an option, but just know that the costs are going to be at least 4 times higher to do that than the crack fill seal coat. But at some point, you're going to have to do that anyway. And so you can defer maintenance, the cost go up. But sometimes, when you're working within budgets, you've got to do that type of thing. You've got to make those types of choices. But again, you at least have some information to be able to make some choices. And again, some of this is subjective. So, maybe you'd prefer that mill and overlay over a crack fill, and maybe you think it needs to happen sooner rather than later. Would it be, would those types of choices work from an engineering standpoint? Sure, they would. Trying to lay this out in a way that makes sense, and the other thing is we try to group improvement areas. So for example, the street that Ryland lives on might be a little bit different condition than Daniel Street. Well, we're going to seal coat them both at the same time because it just makes sense from the standpoint of constructability and having a contractor come in and they don't want to move from street to street to street. They want to do all the streets in an area if we can, if it makes sense. And we try to group that too. So there's a lot of things kind of at play, but we try to bring our experience here to lay out something that makes some sense.
So Joe, first of all, I really admire you taking the time to put this together. This is something we've been looking for 10 years that we've never had before. So kudos to that and thank you very much. Second point is, I like the idea of what you've proposed, these big dollar issues every 2 years. For example, like in 2026, if we want to seal coat River Park and Fifth Street, we know that's a big number there, but if we could split it up, if you will, to do 26 River Park, 27 Fifth Street, or something to even out those costs so that we are actually doing something every year. And, that's an approach we could take on some of these streets at least, so we can continue the project, not let it sit for 2 years, but every year we do something.
Well, there's two sides to that. So I use unit prices that we've seen in town before, and typically in the past we've been doing a $50,000-$60,000 seal coat. Well, if we're doing a $200,000 seal coat, we might get better prices than what I'm indicating here. And so that might save you 10, 15, maybe 20%, which is great. Those are real dollars, but if you start decreasing the project size, it still costs the contractors the same amount to mob into town, and you're going to pay that every year versus every other year. So that's kind of why we set it up on an every other year basis. You just get a little bit more bang for your buck. Those seal coat contractors come through and they'll do the whole town, and they'll do everything that you have to do in a day or a day and a half for sure. They're very, very efficient.
Yeah.
Do we would we get better pricing if we looked at the surrounding area? Like if the county is going to be doing work on a road and we can continue to into our area with the same crew, is that something that we can get better pricing on, or that we need to be aware of those schedules?
It's just hard to coordinate that, and a lot of times the counties are shooting different emulsions and using a different size rock on their pavements than you do on a low speed roadway. So they might be in the area, but they might not have all the materials there for you.
Okay.
usually, if you got $150,000 seal coat project, it's a day project for them. And that's what they want to do. They want to start seal coating at, 7:30 in the morning, and they'll seal coat till 8 at night, and they'll be done. That's how they make money and be efficient. And, if you have a day and a half's worth of work, that's doable. But if you can kind of keep it to a day's worth of work, that's where you're going to do the best. So,
All excellent.
That's good
comments.
information.
Yeah. Well, why don't you guys can give, obviously you haven't had a chance to read it. Think about it, let me know. I've got some hard copies here I can drop off at City Hall if you want to put them in council packets and initiate the discussion, or I'm willing to do whatever you want. If you want to get this group together to meet again, that's fine too.
Guess I would just
I think
say we go ahead, Ryland.
I think we should put it in the council packet. I think it's something we've been talking about. And so I don't think any action will be coming away from the September meeting, but at the same time, I think council just needs more time to look at it. And
I'd agree with you on that. I say we get it in. We show them it's complete, maybe do a very brief overview, let them read it over, and then we can have a discussion.
Do you guys want paper copies? Some of these are on 11 by 17 in color, and if
yeah.
I think if you've got a PDF for it, Joe, you can send to me. We can get it on into the packet that way.
Well, I did send you a PDF in advance of the meeting, so it's the same document.
We could print 11 by 17s for the committee, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Going back, just to identify, was Kane, or were you going to identify where the street signs dots should be on the map?
I think I'll take a swing at it.
Okay.
And then give it to Kane for review and comment.
Yep, that works for me.
So we can work with some proposal cost.
Yeah.
Going back to the speed limit reduction, not the pavement, but
Yeah.
speed limit. Yeah, I'm sure that'd be a good information for the council to have that in front of them, so. I don't think it's gonna be my personal opinion, I don't think it's gonna be as much as we think it's going to be, but that's.
I just got one quick item. Joe, thanks for the pavement plan, but I would also like the Streets and Roads Committee and council to be aware, it would be nice to have some discretionary funds for little road projects, small pavement patching, striping, just miscellaneous projects. Like I had Durst Outdoor Services this year. We spent 25,000 with them in a matter of a couple days. I could find $25,000, more of projects, relatively easy. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're not putting all of our money into just these projects, and we have some money to work on the smaller, lesser projects.
Right.
Discretionary stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate everybody's time. Daniel, I know you're a busy guy. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah. Sorry we went a little long.
Oh, no worries. That was a good meeting. I appreciate you making the opportunity for me to get on Zoom here. So
Excellent. Jason, one comment. When
Yeah.
you were talking, were you using a microphone or just speaking into, because your voice was muffled a lot?
I'm speaking into my Logie brand microphone, whatever thing this is that I've got on my computer.
It's just maybe it's just speaker system in the council room. It just seemed like it was, there's a lot of bass or something in there that wasn't sharp.
I have a deep voice. No. I don't know. I guess this is the first I've ever heard it through all the meetings. I've been using the same system for over a year now, so nobody's said anything. I'll have to keep an eye out for that, I guess.
Okay.
Everybody else can hear me fine?
Yeah, pretty good on my end.
I'm having a hard time hearing what you're saying. I mean, I hear noise. I'm just not able to pick up the words. Kane, help me here.
It's a little muffled. It might be the speakers in the council room here.
Okay.
You could check your microphone settings too, because sometimes when you switch from Teams to Zoom, that likes to go back to your webcam microphone versus your headset microphone. I don't know.
Well,
I have
it
to-
is a webcam microphone. I don't have a headset, so
Oh, okay.
Okay.
maybe I get a headset for the next one.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.